Say that again, Duncan, I couldn't hear.
There are only 3 board members present right now.
Oh, I see. Should we do as Mary suggested and do the call to order and just wait on and open the public comments and then just wait for, hopefully Charlie will be in by then?
Sure.
Is Nancy on her way or is she going to dial in?
No, she's there. I see Nancy. She's there. Yep. So I'll call the meeting to order, and it looks like we have Howard, Duncan, and Nancy is present currently. Charlie is en route. Craig is absent with notice. Mark is online as well as I am online. I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States,
which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we can open up the public comments at 4:35.
And just to clarify, members of the public, we're asking that you communicate through the email. The Google Meet is open for the board members participating remotely, but we are asking that the public continue to use the comments email, which is on the school district website.
Okay.
Regarding the non-discrimination policy, and I have a handful from January 11th, 12th to the committee, and then I have one from January 18th, and this one is regarding the policy committee itself. Okay. All right. I have no new public comment then.
Okay. Can we move on to the current bills payable, or do we have to wait for Charlie?
Because you're going to take action, it might be good to wait for a physical quorum. What I might suggest is that you call at this stage to go over information about the collective bargaining agreement. Mr. Hansen was part of the negotiating team, so I think he can catch up pretty quickly. But that might be a good use of time at this stage. And so you would recess, which would put a pause on public comment and excuse non-participants for that period of time.
So we're going to be skipping down to the new business of the collective bargaining agreement. Is that what you said?
So you could recess so the board can discuss, deliberate the contract, and then come out. Hopefully Mr. Hansen will be here at that time, and you can take a public vote.
Okay. So I can call a recess right now then.
The door just opened.
Oh, did he just? Okay, that would be better. There he is. Okay, great. Now we have Charlie. Okay, so Charlie, we just opened up public comments and now we're going to be going into the current bills payable section. So Mrs. Moriarty, we have the attachment 1 and 2. I'd like to have a motion to approve the manifest 3021 and 3023.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor of paying the bills?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have under new business, the collective bargaining agreement between the Interlakes School Board and the Interlakes Education Association for 2023-2026 action item. Mrs. Moriarty.
So the board most likely would like to probably recess to discuss the contract proposed. And then once you've had a chance to discuss that, you would return to public session to take a vote publicly.
Okay, so let's recess. And how is that going to work with us online here?
So are you by yourselves? Can you
Yes.
confirm that?
Yep.
Carolyn's by herself, Mr. Billings?
Absolutely.
And
Aye.
aye.
Technically, you were in a non-meeting just because it was the contract, but
People are coming in.
Okay. So under new business in the collective bargaining agreement, as I mentioned, we are going to have Charlie Hanson discuss a little bit.
Lisa, 1 second. People are just coming in now.
Oh, okay, I can't see, sorry. And you're
I
breaking,
think you officially want to say that you rejoin, that the recess is over.
yes, I will. Is everybody in? So we're back. The recess is now over, so we're back in session and public session. What time is it there? 4:51?
Yes.
Okay, at 4:51. We have Charlie Hanson, who maybe can give us, or maybe should make the motion first and then have Charlie discuss the summary of the collective bargaining agreement.
That's fine.
So who would like to make a motion to approve the Interlakes Board collective bargaining agreement with the Interlakes Education Association for 2023-2026?
Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Anthony seconded.
Okay, Charlie, did you want to do just a brief summary for the public?
Sure. We met with the association starting back in October, or late September, October. Regardless, we met a number of times and we both had some where we wanted to be. We actually ended up not being able to reach agreement amongst ourselves, so the next step in this process is to hire a mediator, which we did. And in December, we met here all day and reached an agreement with the help of the mediator. And the results of that are, in general, the highlights. Probably the biggest highlight is the wages. In year one, it's a 3-year deal commencing in 23-24 school year. So it's 23-24, 24-25, 25-26. Those respective years is years 3. Year one, 4% increase on base. And we also have an off-step increase. That off-step is $3,500. Year two, 3.75% on base. The off-step adjustment goes down to $3,000. And then year three, 3.5% increase on base with an off-step adjustment of $2,600.
Okay.
Begin to pay a stipend for certain overnight field trips, $100. We are reducing the number of planning blocks. Health insurance stays the same, although if one plan is taken away, it will be changed by mutual agreement of the association and of us. And then there were some other minor things. Is there any bigger item? I think those are the major things.
That's good. Okay, all those in favor?
Madam Chair, could we have the dollar cost raised for 3 years?
Yes. Charlie, did you want year one? Was it 551? 555? You can go ahead, Charlie, and read them.
Year one is 555, 130. Year two is 496, 645. Year three is 443, 730. for a total over the 3 years of $1,495,505.
And then year one also.
One also has the additional overnight planned field trips, which will be approximately $11,202.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we ready to vote on the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion as summarized by Charlie?
Aye.
I'm sorry, it should be a roll call vote because you have people remote. My apologies.
The secretary, pull the board.
Mr. Cunningham,
Yes.
Mr. Porter Zuckerman,
Yes.
Ms. Starmer.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Billings.
Yes.
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, great. Moving on. We have the budget work session.
Public comment, just to clarify, is continuing to,
It has to go 30 minutes, right? So it hasn't been.
so we have, hopefully people have budget materials remotely and in person. I did introduce, at least to the board, this is Chuck Bates. Chuck Bates is a former Interlakes High School teacher who is a certified business administrator who is assisting us at this time that Ms. Temporino has needed some personal leave for her family. So I'm very grateful to Mr. Bates for being willing to come out of retirement to lend us a hand. I also want to thank Mrs. Dollop and Mrs. Soma in our office. They have been instrumental as well in us being able to bring you a draft budget this evening for your consideration and discussion. And so we have members of the administrative team. I think everybody knows everybody at this table. So our hope is to walk you through the budget and some highlights and certainly take any input that the board has. So everybody should have their materials. Mr. Billings and Mrs. Merrill, Mrs. Dollop is going to try to help to make sure that you're able to be on the same page remotely as we are in person.
Thank
So
you.
if you open your budget book, I think the very first thing is if you go to budget overview, I will give some highlights. And I don't know, Mrs. Marsh, if you wanted to look on with somebody. Oh, our budget books. I see that our administrative team didn't get to pick theirs up. They are in the office. You want to grab them, Mr. Hilder? Thank you. The general fund operational budget that we're presenting this evening is $30,657,011. Increase of $1,040,435, or 3.51% over the 22-23 budget, which was $29,616,576. Health and dental insurance is certainly a driver of this. It has increased a total of, lost my place here. 7.1% is the GMR, but the total amount of the increase is $560,000. This also includes the increase in the retiree health benefit as well. The retiree health benefit has increased about $243,000. So that is certainly a substantial amount added to this budget. New Hampshire retirement, unusual, has gone down, which has gone down for teachers, and it has gone down for employees as well. So that certainly has been a savings that you'll see reflected in those lines throughout the budget. Regular education will show an overall decrease of 2.19% from the previous year. Our FTEs for 23-24 are 75.70 for full-time teaching equivalents for regular education versus 78.10 in the 22-23 school year. This represents a decrease for FTEs. This reduction is through natural attrition. Last year, we had a late retirement and we had a low number of students enrolling in kindergarten. We're seeing a trend. Our class sizes are definitely decreasing at the elementary level. We were able to not fill that position for this current school year, and we anticipate that it will not be needed for next school year. In addition, we also had a resignation in health and family and consumer science. We dispersed those 0.4 FTEs micro assignments to existing staff that allowed them to maintain a full employment and allowed us not to have to fill that 0.4 FTE. We believe we can do the same thing for the incoming school year. There are 3 eligible retirement incentives and 4 planned retirements. So 4 people retiring, 3 people eligible for the retirement incentive. Of those 4 people, we have 2 of the positions are specialists. So they provide specials at the elementary level. Because of the unique nature, that's specialized certification, as well as it's a critical scheduling piece in terms of planning time for teachers, as well as scheduling academic interventions, reading time, all those things. There's a lot of constraints that happen relative to scheduling the special classes that students are taking. We need to fill those positions, so we can't, through a natural attrition, reduce our FTEs. We had originally, in the fall, I thought we would be able to reduce 2 of the other retirements through natural attrition. I am recommending a reduction of only 1 at this time. That would reduce us from 25 classrooms at ILES to 24 classrooms. We are proposing to maintain 1 of those positions, which is actually, it's a middle school position. We were going to try to fill that middle school position through an elementary level position. Because the needs of the students have in our elementary school are definitely such that we feel that having a lower class size makes sense. We are concerned about continued impacts of unfinished learning. Certainly for struggling learners, that gap is greater than for students who have not had significant struggles with their academics.
I don't recall, I have something in that mind, maybe there was a document in the package that talked to this, but do we have over time the ratio of students with special needs, additional needs relative to the total
We
population?
do, yes.
Okay.
We'll show that shortly.
Okay, great.
So my recommendation is that we fill 2 of the retirements, and we through natural attrition, we reduce 1. Actually, fill 3 of the retirements and reduce 1. As I move on, that also, let's see, there's, for regular education, you'll see an increase in 2 particular lines towards the end of this page, the last paragraph, of almost $50,000. This is to support, we've established 2 advisory councils. We have an elementary principal advisory council, and we have a middle high school advisory council. And the stipends, and then plus fixed costs, totals about $50,000 in stipends, plus the additional fixed costs, which you can usually is about 21% or so. Not budgeted that we will consider. We are concerned about the upper multi-age at Sandwich Central School. There are 24 students scheduled to be in that upper multi-age for next year. We have a bubble also at the lower end of the building of 28 students. So our teacher that we use to help offset those bubbles needs to be there with the 20. We're concerned about those 24. Something for consideration is possibly the remaining ESSER funds. There's about 170,000, I believe, left that potentially that could be used to help create smaller class sizes. I know that Mr. Hilger is very concerned about the learning needs of that incoming upper multi-age. And when you're at 24, it doesn't give you a whole lot of wiggle room if there's, move-ins. And it never fails. Your highest class is where all the move-ins seem to come from. And also,
Mary, question. You talk about this year from next year, you're talking about a multi-age K1 that's got 28, if I heard you right, and a 4-5 that's got like 26. What's
Actually,
the breakdown K1 and 4-5?
We'll take a look at that in a moment, and it's 2-3, that is the 28th. K1 is actually scheduled to be about 13, which is potentially a positive number for us if the board might consider having full day kindergarten. It might be a nice year to begin that evolution. But we will look specifically at particular class sizes in a moment.
Okay.
Also, we have been funding through ESSER, and I have to say, I think this is one of the greatest bargains that we have. We have a retired teacher who provides us literacy support at the high school level for some of our students who really are challenged with reading and writing at the high school level. Because of her being a retired employee, she doesn't collect retirement. She's part-time. But that individual also receives the health benefit already because they were part of that time period. So it really is a very economical solution for us and something that might be considered for ESSER funding. We did not include it in this budget at this point. Also, something that I know this is an area that we always try to kind of smooth out the budget, furniture. And our furniture is getting old. It's getting tired. I think it's something for consideration of potential carryover funds at the end of the year. That maybe a good $75,000 infusion would help us replace some classrooms that are quite frankly, some of the furniture is a little rickety. And it's time to look to buy some updated furniture, which is incredibly expensive. To get quality is much more expensive than we might expect, but it is hopefully something that will last. So special education, also not budgeted. I'm just trying to at least give you a flavor for some things for consideration down the road. We have had an amazing director of student services who is phenomenally skilled at what she does and is able to work an incredibly long day and a long week. I think it would be beneficial. She's willing and able to offer some assistance. That assistance is really needed in Interlakes versus Ashland. So, the position is an SAU position, but I think that consideration for support for Interlakes is something that is worth looking at. I think it would allow the new director to come in, have the experience of Mrs. Dodge taking over the out-of-district placements, which Mrs. Dodge has managed those, as well as her full-time job. It would also maybe allow some time for the new person to spend some time, particularly at Interlakes Elementary School. It's a complex building, and making connections between regular ed and special education. We have, I believe it is 18 one-on-one paraeducators. We have the preschool program. We have the PALS program. There's a lot of different dynamics there. And I think for the new person to be able to get a lay of the land and maybe see if there are ways that, we could potentially look to support the work in that building, whether that's in a future year, potentially transitioning a current case manager position to a special ed coordinator, potentially. I'm hesitant to ever say that at this stage because our enrollment keeps declining, but there is a need for a level of coordination, particularly in that building. And I think we need to see if there's an opportunity that we might be able to take advantage of to help us figure out what we might need. This could be potentially funded through IDA grant funds. So IDA grant funds are the federal funds we get from the federal government. They come down to the state. It could also be potentially for carryover funds. So that's not included in here, but I think, again, planting some seeds for consideration in the future. You will see special education, extended school year, and summer school. You'll see an increase in both of those lines. We budgeted that based on our actuals. We had a number of students take advantage, and I want to pause for a minute. Between our extended school year and our summer learning, we had 28 teachers work in our summer programming, and we had 34 paraeducators. It's commitment over the summer. It's one that's greatly appreciated. And as we dig in deeper, we'll talk about the students it impacted, but we opted to budget it at what it actually has taken to run it. Athletics, you'll see that we have brought middle school football into the financial part of our responsibility. If you recall, the board approved the inclusion of middle school football, which has been an incredible asset to us. Coach Donnelly has built an amazing program, and it is definitely feeding into the high school level. And so we will be taking on that financial responsibility. They built that program. The Haywards were certainly significant in helping to get that funded. And I know there were many other people, but they funded it for 3 years. The participation has been high, and it's, certainly they've demonstrated their ability to sustain it. Also, you'll see that we are including $5,000 to support a new recognition program, the Interlakes Athletic Hall of Fame. This is to try and recognize achievements that people have done throughout their time in Interlakes athletics. And it's a program that Ms. Dumais would like to help get off the ground. Guidance services. This is probably, again, another driver of the budget. Last May or June, the board supported bring forward funds to develop a partnership with Growing Roots to provide licensed mental health services to our students. We have been able to do that for 25 students. It has helped to remove barriers for families. We support families that do not have health insurance available, and families that do have health insurance, they are financing that themselves. But our ability to provide access during the school day and really to help streamline that access to a mental health provider has, I think, provided a lot of relief. So we definitely are seeing that as an important prong in our ability to support our learners. And so we are proposing $125,000 in the budget to support this. Some people might say, well, why don't you hire a licensed mental health worker full-time? I think one of the benefits we've seen is that we have people with different expertise. We have a person who has younger children working at the elementary level. We have more adolescents at the middle high. Also, having a little more variety has helped us to figure out who might be a better fit for a student. So I must say that has been really beneficial, as well as I think their connection to the Growing Roots company network helps them to also be able to be supported in their work, which, again, I think, the more specialized you become, the harder it is for us to do that. So I think it does offer, it offers us a little more richness, I think, to that experience than if we were to bring somebody on board ourselves.
Did we pay for this from ESSER funds?
No,
last year?
the board carried forward money in the budget. And part of the reason we had started working with Growing Roots, we had some students we needed to support it last year. Their availability and accessibility, we were concerned about all of the mechanics of funds of going out to bid and things like, there are a lot of nuances, and we had a partnership that was working and that they were saying they could support. So it felt like it was helpful to be able to use district dollars.
Thank you.
So we are strongly advocating that the board consider including that. And again, I think I said it at the time last spring, I don't see this as a cost that's going to go away. Technology services, we gave you a little preview of that. Wireless access points at $110,000. We do anticipate $66,000 in revenue through E-rate funds to help offset that. The other part is almost a $41,000 purchased service to manage those access points. Quite frankly, the networks and security and all of that is complex, and having a service that can help support that really does allow us to have operations that are stable and secure. Additionally, electronic access, although it reflects an increase, I have decreased this line. I am hoping that we could consider ESSER funds as well, potentially here. We did remove a competency recovery program and learning management system that last year we did use ESSER funds, some carryover funds to smooth out that line. The electronic access is a large line. And we will get a little that it supports our operations, you know, people coming in and checking in, you know, the reality of that system, it's part of our safety system. It does flag if somebody is on a. In addition, we have all of our learning components. You know, it's quite a list when you look into the detail and when you look at the breakdown. It's a big expense for us, but it is a big part of how we do business today. Facilities, operational plant. Well, I think we can all agree just about everything that runs our homes has gone up. Electricity has gone up, fuel oil has gone up, and pellet fuel has gone up. Propane has gone down, however, when you see that in the budget. So that is certainly, you know, an impact on the budget. Building and equipment, care of grounds. I'm sorry.
Maybe this is a Brian question. With the rates going up, does that mean we are also getting paid more for our electricity?
No, that's the recs for that seem to be coming in about the same. They kind of hold those and buy when they feel the market's right. So it's not like a fixed every month look at. So that seems to be pretty level. We're getting back.
Thank you.
So buildings and equipment and care of grounds, there's $662,000 of funds budgeted to support the capital improvement and maintenance plan. Most significant in these projects is roof section 10 at ILES in the amount of $312,000. Brian, roof section 10, if you were to give a description.
That is the 5-6 wing.
Okay. So that is $312,000. 4 projects, $300,000 from the capital improvement and maintenance deferred. These projects are the Humiston building parking lot, Sandwich Central School painting of the multipurpose room. The reality is the year after there's going to be some roof work there, and it seemed like it didn't make sense to paint when that might cause, you know, some difficulties and require repainting. Interlakes Elementary School parking lot and sidewalk repairs. We do have some funds in the budget relative to improving our site improvements. We're hoping that might address some issues. And then the district upper utility field improvements. Why we're proposing is, again, trying to bring in a budget that, you know, is as conservative as we can be at this stage. But certainly we recognize that deferring things, you know, over time does cost more money. Honeywell leases, they totaled almost $570,000. Not budgeted here are any funds for renovations to our bathrooms. We, you know, certainly as we look at our restrooms, there is a need to update them, to modernize them, to make them gender neutral. That is a significant investment along with our locker rooms. And it may be something the board, I think, wants to contemplate potentially trying to build up the expendable trust over a few years to try to, you know, absorb that cost. A short-term fix may be $125,000 potentially through the remaining expendable trust funds to try to add some more single restrooms. I think Brian and I talked, and probably thinking about 25 grand a restroom is not unreasonable for a single restroom. So that would, you know, potentially get 5 more single restrooms in the district. Something the board may want to consider, as you recall, you know, a significant amount of the expendable trust for facilities was used for the turf field. There is about $75,000 in the health insurance expendable trust that I believe was from a time that there was maybe a self-insurance piece. I don't necessarily have great institutional knowledge on that at this time, but it's money that is sitting there that has not really had a purpose. And you could create a warrant article that asks the voters to basically kind of dissolve that expendable trust and shift those funds to the facilities. I think that might potentially be something for you to consider about those funds. Transportation. I think the most significant impact for transportation is last year. Again, the board supported, thank you very much, a third run for the Hewitt Technical Center. This again opens up more access for our students, and they are taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And it is about an $83,000 increase. So that is something, again, you supported through end of year fund balance, and it would be appreciated if that could become part of the operating budget. Retirement, there are 3 retirements totaling about $166,000, and this is about $57,000 over last year. Retiree health insurance, as I mentioned earlier, that is up about $244,000. That's part of that $569,000 increase, $560,000 increase. But I think it's important to just at least acknowledge that about $1.4 million of the budget is retiree health insurance. It's, you know, sometimes when people compare budgets to budget in other school districts, that maybe they didn't necessarily have that as an option in terms of for employees. So I think it's just something to keep in mind. Non-bargaining salaries, so that is administrative and secretarial, custodian salaries, facilities salaries are budgeted at a 5% increase. They don't receive steps, so that is 5% on what their base was from the current year. Collective bargaining agreements, you'll be entering the 3rd year with your collective bargaining agreement with the ILSSA, the Interlake Support Staff Association. And because the CBA was just approved this evening and was ratified by the ILEA, that will go before the voters in March for consideration. But because of that, there are no raises for staff members covered by the ILEA in the budget. So those raises would reflect a 1.91% increase on last year's budget. The raises plus that up about $11,000 in stipends. Okay. So I know I can have pacing issues. We're going to dig in deeper unless anybody has any questions on that section.
I have a question about that last one, the support staff contracts. Explain to me, there's no increase on?
So it's a separate warrant article. So it doesn't get factored into the current operating budget because it has to be voted and approved.
Even though it's the 3rd year of a 3-year contract?
So the ILSSA is included. What's not included is the ILE.
I got
And it might have been my
I
wording.
misheard. No,
Maybe I could have put a comma or something.
I'm sure it's me.
All right, so the next page.
Quick question, should we close the public comment? It's 5:23, right now?
And I just want to make sure you factored out time for the recess.
You came back from the recess at 10 of. So
Okay.
I think we'll be okay.
It's
I have
okay.
no-
There's no public comment, Lisa.
Okay, so I just wanted to know if we should close it at this point.
You certainly can.
Okay, so 5:24. Thank you.
All right, so the next page is looking at enrollment. So this shows, Mr. Hanson, I believe this answers your question. So we have a total of 919 students. This is dipstick on October 1st, always for this report. This may be slightly different than where we are at this moment, but we try to be consistent for these reports that we are dipsticking at the same time. the things we are required to do a beginning of year report, which Mr. Parsons is a big part of. And that is quite a bit of labor in terms of being able to report information to the state. We have 767 students that do not have IEPs and 152 students that do have IEPs, individual education plans. And so you can see over time how that has changed. So that's about 16.54% currently of our students who need specialized services for their education. I think the thing to look at when you look at this over time from 07 to 2022 is the complexities of students can be very different. A student may need a slight degree of support maybe in speech versus a student may need a substantial amount of support in specialized programming and a one-to-one paraeducator, assistance with toileting. So that there is a wide range between needs of students. And so I think it's difficult to sometimes look and compare percents to what maybe the impact financially is in terms of supporting individual education plans.
This does not include out-of-district placements, correct?
It does,
It doesn't.
yes.
I just think it's surprising over time how consistent it seems to be in proportion.
It is interesting. The next page shows you just our breakdown by school. You'll notice that we report out middle schools and high school, even though we are a middle high. The reality is the state sees us as two schools, although we see ourselves as one school. And the combined for the middle high is 443 students. And I think the next page, which is the various enrollment and projection numbers, I believe, Mr. Billings, this will get to your question. So you have projected enrollment for ILES, for Sandwich Central School, and for 7 through 12 and our postgraduate students. So if we maintain 24 classrooms at ILES, which is included in this budget, that works out to class sizes of approximately 16. If you look at Sandwich Central School, grade 2 and 3, that becomes that group of 28. And so we have this teacher that is able to help us with bubbles. That class will be split. When you look at the 4 or 5, it is 24. Again, that is where we have a concern. And possibly considering ESSER funds for class size reduction may make sense.
And that's 22 now, and that classroom will go to 24 next year.
Correct. I think it's worth noting grade 6 at ILES is 2 students. This is a large class for us right now. And that is a class, I believe it is 38% of the class does receive special education services. They have certainly been a class that we've provided a substantial amount of support. I know Mrs. Marsh is here this evening. She's one of the teachers. We have 5 teachers right now for grade 5. And they are working very diligently trying to close gaps. But it is a class that I think will need substantial needs throughout their time, and one that I just want the board to be aware of. The other thing you'll see when we talk about Mara Vista, so that's a class of 42 versus a class of 53 right now. So, 43 right now. So,
Wow.
so you see, we have 43 sixth graders right now. And next year we'll have 72. So when you're budgeting for Mara Vista, that's a substantial increase in costs, just as an FYI. You also have some other information there. So at ILES, 86 students have special education plans. Sandwich Central School, 9. The middle high, 57 students for a total of 152 students. 504s. So again, this is a need for specialized in order to access learning, that there is something that is needed to make an accommodation for someone to be able to access their learning. ILES, there are 36 plans. Sandwich Central School is 6. The middle high is 50. Just to give you a sense of that, our administrators help to manage those plans. Our guidance counselors help to manage those plans. And so, there are requirements of meetings and, ensuring that those accommodations are happening. It's a big responsibility. Homeless, we have 18 students now whose family is experiencing homelessness. English speakers of other languages, we have 7 students. And our vocational students, we have a total of 41, 39 at the Hewitt and 2 at the Winnisquam Agricultural Program.
Many different languages.
Do you know?
Vietnamese and Spanish, Patois, which is Jamaican dialect, and those are the top languages right now.
Do the vocational students, are they half day out and half day in, or?
Did you want to explain how the schedule works?
Sure. Majority of the programs are exactly what you're describing. They're gone for half the day, and they're at the middle high for half the day. So that's 2 classes at the middle high and then 1 class over at the Hewitt. So the transportation just eats up that other half every day. Yeah.
And they're able to come out with a certification if they stay with the program and are able to meet the competencies. There are a number of different programmings.
Right. Lots of certifications and running start credits and lots of opportunities, internships and
Great.
Yeah.
The next page is just to show over time in terms of what we have budgeted and our actual in terms of hiring for paraeducators. And sometimes those changes are because of slight changes in programming, changes in hours. I would say last year, the anomaly was certainly a hiring issue. If you recall, we were struggling to hire last year. But we fairly close to what we currently budgeted and, where we currently are, we're fairly close. The next graph is showing you free and reduced lunch. I think it's worth noting that 34% of the students at ILES qualify for free and reduced lunch. So that is our heaviest free and reduced lunch percentage within the district. And I think that is, another piece of complexity sometimes for needs. When you look at the next page, it compares us to the state. And so we exceed the state average. The state is at 23.68 and we are at 28.45. Certainly there were times that was much higher for the district than presently, but it is still, a need relative to food insecurity for some of our families. Lisa Ransom is our outreach counselor, and she plays a significant role working with families to try to help make connections and try to fill in gaps for them. So the next section kind of goes into pie graph, showing you the proposed operating budget. We are in the people business, and that is the major part of our budget is salaries and benefits. Contracted services, which again is you're often buying the services of someone to support either direct learning with a student or supporting the facility to be able to house our learning. So this is the breakdown of the budget. And then the increase that right now is proposed is 3.51. The next page is just a breakdown by category. So that is just another way of looking at how various increases or decreases have impacted the overall budget. And we'll be digging into the master budget, which might give some of this a little more flavor. The next graph is special education costs comparison for 5 years. We've stayed fairly stable in the last 3 years, except for the last 2, you've noticed an increase in transportation. We have out-of-district placements, And the, oftentimes the transportation is as much as the cost of the out-of-district program or more. So that has certainly impacted the transportation costs for special education. I will say we have, and I hope it's something that the district is proud of, and I hope it's something that Mrs. Dodge is proud of. Our preschool program, we have 2 preschool classes this year. We have the PALS program, Personal and Academic Life Skills, at the at ILES. We have Laker Learning Lab at the middle high school, and the Life Skills program at the middle high school. And they are really, the staff is really doing a tremendous job, and I think that helps to support learning. It supports learning for students with a degree of need that requires specialized attention. It allows us to keep students in their home school, and really also it has an impact on overall costs. Otherwise, we would need to be looking for specialized programming. The next page is just an analysis of the comparison of health insurance costs from last year to this year. So that $560,000 I referenced earlier, this is just how that is calculated. This gives you the breakdown. It looks at all the various lines for health and dental. And again, includes the retiree amount as well. The next page is broken down by cost center. You'll see, we're fairly, our Interlakes Elementary and the Middle High, fairly, 2 buildings of almost similar size, fairly dispersed evenly. District-wide is, the reason that is reflected at 35.5 is we have positions that are shared, and so they get counted as district-wide positions. Facilities costs. Over the last 5 years, you'll see care of grounds has an increase this year, relative, comparatively speaking to previous years, as well as buildings and equipment. And we'll get a little deeper into that in a little bit. So the next pages, I'm not going to go through. They're there for your review, but these are broken down by cost center or by each school. So there's certainly something for the board to review. What I'm going to suggest is we move into the master budget. So if you're able to find your master budget pad, and then I'm going to distribute this. These are my notes that I think sometimes are just helpful. Yes. So that way are helpful to understand what each of the various amounts are.
Sorry.
I didn't do a good split.
Yeah,
Yeah, you certainly do.
1, 2, 2 or 3, please.
So your master budget says page 23 on it. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So this is regular education. And so I'm going to draw your attention to 2 lines, line 5 and line 6. If you recall earlier, I mentioned that we had added funds for the advisory councils at the elementary and at the middle high level. And so those funds are reflected here. One principal, or somehow some put them in activities and some put them in tutors, but that's what that increase is due to. That is the principal advisory council. So again, line 5 and line 6 on your spreadsheet. I think probably the next notable piece I just would like to draw your attention to is line 18, contracted services. And if you look at my notes, about 119,000 is for the middle high. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Almost 49,000 is for ILES. And Sandwich Central School is about $7,000. Big part of that are our field trips, our field experiences. So Dr. Downing and I have been talking about the New York City field trip, which you'll see budgeted at $70,000 based on my notes. So if you look at the green paper, we have been talking about maybe that trip is at a point of transformation. And so why don't I let you maybe share where the 8th grade team may be at this stage?
Sure. So historically, there had been a unit that was taught in 8th grade that's very much surrounded terrorism and a lot of other components of that within social studies. And from that was bred a trip to New York City that encompassed a lot of, sorry,
Just full of terrorists.
again, I'm trying to speak
The teacher
globally.
did a beautiful job, I will say.
Yes, it was a great unit from what I heard. Part of that obviously was 9/11, but there were a lot of other pieces that they did too that weaved into social studies, like with the Tenement Museum and Immigration, Ellis Island, and all of those pieces. I think what's been noticed by the team is that through looking at curriculum and where things belong within the spread, that we might be looking at possibly moving this trip up a bit age-wise, given where a lot of the components of the New York City relation to our curriculum fall, if that makes sense. And actually morphing that into another trip, where if I'm not sure if you remember, I shared last year and this year that our 8th grade students went to Boston and did a variety of things that had to do with the curriculum that Wendy Taylor is very involved with. And they did pieces of the Freedom Trail and some other tours around museums in Boston that were all related to the things that they were learning in class. After talking with the team, they feel that the first thing we want to do is have a discussion with the social studies department, 7 through 12, about the appropriate placement for a New York City trip within the grade spans, and also think about, I guess you could say, beefing up the Boston trip a little bit and maybe turning that, because it's New England, it's more local, into an overnight trip so that they can really go through everything that Boston has to offer that directly relates to the 8th grade curriculum. Some of those pieces are like the Harvard Peabody Museum, which actually has a really big geology piece that John Snyder was really excited about. That would be into his
He's our
curriculum,
science teacher.
as well as social studies, Bunker Hill, Freedom Trail, the South Meeting House, the USS Constitution, the Holocaust Museum, the new Embrace MLK exhibit that's up that they actually didn't get to see the last time they were there because it's so new. And maybe a harbor cruise and some Fenway. So just some ideas, but maybe turning that into an overnight trip so that students can experience kind of that, just a lot of the rich history we have right here in New England, and possibly looking at moving that New York City trip a little bit later down the road. So, but not wanting to discredit that both the Boston trip and the New York City trip, I think for many students is a once in a lifetime experience. So,
And so we are thinking we might be able to reduce that number. When we initially prepared the budget, we were thinking New York City. So I think we're thinking that 70,000 can come down to 35,000. So I think that is an adjustment that we can certainly make. And I won't read all of these to the board. I think my notes, and again, they're my notes, please excuse formatting. But that does give you a sense of what those contracted services are, which is up now $35,000 less than what is the increase proposed there. So just under $50,000. And again, Mara Vista is more expensive because we will have 72 students for ILES versus 43. And you pay per student. Would you like me to go on to the other parts of the regular ed? I thought just highlighting, 610 supplies. I have the breakdown by school. I mean, these are the things that just keep school running. They're the crayons, they're the pencils, the paper clips, I'm sorry, what was that?
Sheet music.
Sheet music, things like that. They do add up. And I do know people are very, try to be very responsible with what they are asking for. AV supplies, just because that has such a big increase, that is, we need to buy some new headphones, stereo and noise canceling headphones for ILES, which is about $5,300. Added new equipment, just again, to give you a little flavor of that. Some of that is program development. We do have our 7th and 8th grade. We have our new STEAM edition of the auto program. So trying to continue to grow that. Cameras, telephoto lens, vernier. I wanted to say it was a caliper, but it's probe. Is it a vernier probe?
Probes for science.
Yeah, well, for STEAM, I think it's a type of vernier.
They're the name of the company that makes a whole variety of probes for instrumentation, so for science and for systems.
Thank you. And the STEAM Small Engine 2, $6,000 to again keep, to grow that program. Digital scales, $2,700 inflator for PE. Blow up various spherical objects that always seem to come at me when I walk in the gym. ILES, we've got microphone, solar scope, and some other new scopes and globes, Chromebook charging station, and some bookshelves. Replacement equipment, again, you have kind of just a flavor of that, some tools and materials for the art program, for our computer science at the elementary level, some robotics pieces. We're looking for a small carpet for the classroom at Sandwich, some geometry templates, some headsets. So that gives you a sense of our regular education, which is a big part of what we do. Any questions on that page? I only highlighted a few things. Lisa and Mark, are you okay?
We're fine.
Special education, you'll see a very small increase for special education, which is surprising. It would be a little unsettling too. So we do have, I'm going to draw your attention to contracted services, which is line 53. So this is for the district, we have budgeted $68,600. That is for a board certified behavior analyst. And we also have a CPI trained trainer for $600, services for the deaf, specialized reading tutor, services for the visually impaired. And that the behavior analyst is a 2-day-a-week contract that comes in and helps support for students who have, particularly at the elementary level, that struggle with regulating. It really does provide us with a tool set that allows us to support students to be able to manage their behaviors so that they can attend to their learning. At the middle high, these are alternative augmentative evaluations. These are for communication primarily. And unanticipated, for things that may come up, recreation therapies, particularly to support our life skills program. There's Zumba and various programs that kids are able to participate in, which allows them to access the community in a different way, and also provides them with developing social skills. And ILES, again, the communication evaluations. The registered behavior technician, this is supervision. We have offered, do you want to talk a little bit about RBT so that people know what that is?
Yes, so RBT training is a national training and certification that several of our paraprofessionals have participated in. So it gives them that higher level skill set to support behaviors, track behaviors, and work closely with the behavior analyst to develop programs and plans, all supporting behavior. So we've had a number of paraprofessionals that have taken the training over the summer. And once that certification is obtained, they still need ongoing supervision throughout the school year to maintain that certification. And they test annually each year as well.
And Mrs. Dodge has supported that, and Mrs. Papalardo to provide that training, and certainly paraeducators who avail themselves over the summer to take part in. You know, it's pretty it's rigorous, and you know you have to take tests, which is stress-inducing. So we're very grateful that they take advantage of that. You also see Evolve and Effect. This is Michael McSheen. For $10,000, he is an individual who helps to support students with significant needs. I don't know if you want to share a little highlights of the type of work that he does with our school district.
Yes, so primarily supporting students in the PALS classroom, looking at behavior, communication, and overall programming, access and inclusion to the general ed classroom and the school-wide environment as well.
So also drawing your attention to line 56 and 57, those funds support our out-of-district programming. You do see a decrease. We do have one less out-of-district placement for next year. And that is, the person is reaching an age
Graduating.
of completion. Any questions on that particular page? Okay, drawing your attention to the next page, which is the extended school year. So lines 73 and 74. Again, we're budgeting our actual, as mentioned earlier. The next section on that is bilingual. Again, 7 bilingual students. This individual is employed at 0.9 FTEs, but Ashland purchases 0.2 FTEs. So we have a 0.7 bilingual services within the district, and then Ashland has 0.2. Although this year we have had a higher need based on the needs of the students, Ashland has had less of a need, so we have had to purchase a bit more. It's a helpful relationship because it is very difficult to find services. It's difficult for smaller communities to find services as things fluctuate so much. Yeah. All right, page 26. I think, again, probably just bringing your attention, special education assigned coach. Those are funds available should we have a student who wants to do after-school activities, an internship, and that we need support of somebody to support that individual in participating. Those are funds available to us should that need be something we need to access. Vocational tuition, again, we have 39 UIT students, and 2 students in the Winnisquam agricultural program at this time. Co-curricular.
Can I ask, Holly, is participation in Hewitt increasing over time?
I think we saw a nice level of increase after COVID, after everybody was back in the building and felt comfortable leaving like the community again. So we definitely had some increased interest. And I think the programs have diversified a bit too and have appealed to different students for different programs. So.
And for what it's worth, category, I recently have run into 2 recent graduates who both participated in Hewitt, and it was impactful.
Yes, it is.
It's pretty neat.
Yep.
So probably drawing your attention for co-curricular activities, line 128, which is contracted services. Again, looking at my notes, a big part of those funds are to support our theater program. That was something several years ago on the board. It was determined that the theater program was always looking for donations, was always trying to scrape things together, put on a production, and the decision was made to provide a similar level of funding that is supported for athletics. And so you'll see, the breakdown there that works out to about $24,000 at the middle high, and then $3,200 for winter recreation. and $3,000 for winter recreation, and then $200 for the math competition test writer. The winter recreation program, ILES, will be going on February 6th to various places. You want to just highlight what that is?
Yeah, just working with community collaboration, going to Gunstock Mountain for skiing and tubing, Boulder County Ice Arena, Merrill Bay Arena for ice skating, even to Top Gun Gymnastics, which is out in the Plymouth area as well, and some local snowshoeing and some things back at school as well. But it's a first year in a while that we're able to reach out and some of our community partners and do some of those things. So we're excited, as I know the kids are, and the parents as well in the community. So
Sandwich Central School does is it a 5-week?
6 weeks.
6-week program to King Kine, and also Nordic skiing locally. Our hope is maybe someday we'll be able to grow that at ILES, and this is the first chance to kind of put a toe in the water. It's certainly when you have a larger number, it's a different level of coordination. It takes time and planning with mountains and so forth. But they are certainly preparing for this exciting day on the 6th, and they also are working. Part of it is it's January's Kindness Month, right? So
Right.
kind of it's a celebration of kindness. They are all working to do kind things within the school. So that just gives you a sense of the contracted services for co-curricular. Are there any questions? The activity salaries, line 122 for co-curriculars, that again is part of that co-curricular salary schedule. Those are stipends for various advisors. And just a reminder, there is a co-curricular salary schedule committee. Mark Billings sits on that. That's part of the contract, that it meets at least annually by October. It allows that there's shifts within where placements should be on the schedule. Sometimes activities have grown, it's bigger responsibility, should have changed levels or the amount of these stipends. Then it also has representation from the ILEA. Okay. Athletics. So you have athletics before you. The line 156 contracted services. You have kind of a breakdown of that, and Ms. Dumais did do a little analysis that middle school football is probably impacting the athletic budget
Probably about 12,000 for next year. And it'll go up a little more the year after that, just because the equipment will need to be replaced, but it's all fairly new at this point. So between salaries and transportation and officials and reconditioning of the equipment, should be about 12,000 for next year.
Replacement equipment, you also have a breakdown of that on my notes as well. If you have a question on line 152 and 153, the reason for that change is Ms. Dumais previously was under a teacher contract, and then we changed to an administrator. Administrators fall under employee retirement. Teachers fall under teacher retirement. So it's just, they are different. Any questions on athletics? Participation numbers remain strong. Do you have some highlights of that?
So for last year, we had 326 students that participated in at least one sport. We had 183 in grades 9 through 12 with 143 in grades 6 through 8. Last year we had 37 3-sport athletes, 58 2-sport athletes, and 88 1-sport athletes at the high school level. At the middle school, we had 25 3-sport athletes, 51 2-sport athletes, and 67 1-sport athletes. This year so far, we've had 254 fall athletes and 127 winter athletes.
And I didn't think to ask this earlier, so if you don't have it, Sarah, it's not a problem. The scholar athletes, New Hampshire scholar athletes?
I think we have 12 this year.
Wow. So that recognition is statewide, and it's achieving a level of academic recognition as well as athletic So that's quite an accomplishment.
And that'll take place on April 4th, I believe it is.
Any questions on athletics? Summer school, again, budgeting for what we actually have, and we do have some numbers. Let's see, ILES between ESY and summer school, you had how many students left?
Total of 90, so that breaks down to 50 that enrolled in just our summer programming itself, and then 40 for ESY students for a total of 90. And I think we sent out about 130 invitations, so that was a great turnout for us.
And ESY is extended school year, and that is through an individual education plan, that it's determined that continuing services through the summer is important so that you are able to maintain your learning. And then we have a summer school program, again, opened up for students to close academic gaps. And Jeremy, you had?
We had 18 families committed in some form or fashion last summer. So
Great. And middle high?
38 students, 7 to 12, including life skills.
And we did reduce to a 3-week program last year, and we're maintaining that this year, 3 weeks. We're proposing 3 weeks, 4 days a week. I had our first year out of COVID, we did a 6-week program, 2 3-week sessions, and then we did a 5-week, and then last year was 3. And everyone has convinced me that it is exhausting people. And I'm not sure that the added time is having as much gain as we would like. Families get busy in summer, and the longer you make it, I think it creates more opportunity for, potentially more attendance related issues. So I think being tight, 3 weeks, 4 days a week, I think it's healthier for staff, and I think it's healthier for families. Moving on to the next, we have $1 in for attendance. You're required to have a current officer. We utilize our local police department to help support that. Guidance services, so bringing your attention to line 198. That's the impact of the $125,000 for drone rates. You can also see on my notes on page 3, other things that are included, at the middle high level. Probably most significant is our high set. We do have, last year we had how many students? Or currently?
Last year we had 9 students complete the high set. In the year prior, we had 3, but 5 completed the adult ed program. And so there is a cost to send students. So as part of the high set budget, there is a cost to send students to like the night school or to the adult education program. So that's kind of all bundled together in that line.
And just for the board's information, students who finish through a high set do not count as a graduate for us. If we had our own adult education program and they were fed into that, it would be different. But these are paths that make sense for students for different reasons. But it does impact, particularly where we're small, pretty sensitive to changes. So you said there were 9 last year. That certainly has an impact on our graduation rate. We do want you to know that we work very hard to make sure all kids are completing in one way or another.
Yeah, it fluctuates somewhere. This year we have 3 students working towards high set, so it fluctuates. 9 was a bubble, kind of a higher year, but it's usually a little bit lower than that.
And the other big part of the contracted services is 13,000, almost 14,000. That is our Greater Meredith Partnership, which is actually a very much a bargain. We get an incredible connection with the Greater Meredith Partnership. And I don't know if you want to highlight some of the things they do.
Yeah, so I think that our new director, Mike Griffin, has been doing an amazing job. Really, I think the speaker series, the speakers coming into the classrooms has really flourished. He's brought speakers into full grades, and that's taken place in the auditorium. He's doing a big job fair this spring, bringing a lot of businesses to school for employees, for student employees, internships, job shadows. So he's really making a mark. So, and that's been the same cost for a very long time. So that's been great. Yeah.
So, so that is the contracted services. Again, the driver of that is the 125,000 for growth rates too. Any questions on guidance services? The next page is the guidance registrar, really no changes except for the 5% relative to an increased salary. Health services, again, nothing of significance there. The contracted services for, just because again, people ask about contracted services, line 236 for health services, that's to calibrate some equipment, you know, the hearing and vision and phase one, that line. The next page, psychological services, just so the board is aware, we had 2 school psychologists. This was something that we transitioned to a few years back. So each of them are paid 0.5 by the district and then 0.5 through IDEA funds. That allows the 0.5 through the district allows them to work then with any student. The 0.5 through IDEA, they do various assessments related to special education and other parts related to special ed. So that is, it allows a lot of flexibility. And we have 1 full-time then at ILES. We share a school psychologist between the middle high and Sandwich Central School. So, any questions on that particular section? Speech services. Bringing your attention to line 277. So that's a $28,000 increase. That is related to various evaluations for related to speech. I don't know, Mrs. Dodge, if you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yes, it's also reflecting some additional help, contracted help through Boothby Therapy Services, as we have seen a significant increase in our needs at the preschool level for students coming in who need evaluation and also more intensive services, trying to get that early intervention, you know, to make an impact on these students. So that's why that is there. We need more speech help.
And just so that you realize, we do have, for our speech staff, we do actually, Ashland buys 2 days a week from us for speech. And so there are a total of, let's see, there is a 3.6 speech pathologists, because again, that 0.4 is bought through Ashland. And then there's a speech assistant, which is one speech assistant that is primarily at Interlakes Elementary School. Any questions on speech services? Occupational and physical therapy. So last year we switched from contracted services to hiring an additional occupational therapist. So we have 2 occupational therapists now. 1.5 is funded through the district. 0.5 is funded through IDEA. That was, I think, a very strategic move on our part. It has allowed us more flexibility. That person really is very much part of our staff and able to service students in a very efficient manner and able to support staff in a very efficient manner versus contracted service. Every conversation you're having is a charged there's a charge for that conversation. You'll see on contracted services, you see a reduction. The remaining funds, again, that was because we've shifted. But the remaining funds are for physical therapy services. We do not have a physical therapist on staff. We contract that service. Technology services. So turning to Mr. Parsons a bit here, for contracted services, again, that is that managed access points is a big part of that cost. And also for 735 or line 347, $110,000 of that are those access points. But drawing your attention to certainly a large number in this budget is the electronic information access, and that is line 343. Mr. Parsons has a lovely pie graph for you to help you understand how that all breaks down.
To the folks online, I sent this as a PDF to your email, just so you know, you should have access to it. I sent it this afternoon. You folks are interested. So last year, Mrs. Moriarty asked me to present, and Mrs. Moriarty, if you want to hand this over, that'd be great. Thank you. So years ago, software was in every building's budget, and then when the data privacy laws in New Hampshire changed and federally, it was wise to house them under one department so we can ensure that every single application that we share information with is up to the standards that they need to be. So over time, we've been slowly acquiring more, educational software. And then as the education profession changes, it seems like everything has some sort of software now in order to assist with it. Every textbook we buy has a software component. So what you notice is the breakdown on the pie chart. I tried to break this down into distinct categories. So we have systems operations. Those are the things that we need to basically run school. So that refers to, our visitor management program, our student information system. It's just how do we get up and running? The software we use for our 504 plans is part of that systems. Academic operations is what course specific software must we have in order to run a course. So this is not district or grade level software. This would be things like our Adobe agreement for our entire STEAM department so that we can run Photoshop and we can run video production. So that's nestled under there. Assessment would be things like NWEA and other programs that we use to measure the growth of our learners. Student services are things that we need for our special education department, and just services that, whether it's speech language, I can't even think,
Assessments,
specific assessment tools. Beneath that library, our middle high school and our elementary school library, they share a lot of databases, and everything is moved largely online. So we nestle those under the library. Educational applications, this is where basically the day-to-day software that a teacher might use to augment their lessons, whether it's screencasting software that we allow, we provide for all of our teachers so that they can do more interactive sort of flipped classroom, or it's math support or ELA support. But those are the everyday applications that a student may log into using their one-to-one device, which we provided across the district. Added this year, I did pull out, no offense to Sarah, athletics, only because it doesn't really fall necessarily under systems. Before I had it in educational apps, but one of the things we picked up over the years is we test all of our athletes for concussions. There's a software for it. It used to be in athletic. Now we moved it into technology. And then there's also a large process for acquiring physicals and all the forms that we have to keep track of. So all that software, that would be under athletics. If you go to the next page, there was, yes.
Is there a misplaced comment in
there-
services? Or is it the period that's missed?
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Is that
see.
10,000 or
Oh,
109,000?
yes, you are correct. No, that should be, let me double check and make sure. That should be 10,000.
10,000.
It should be 10,000 for
So there's
sure.
an extra
Yes.
zero, not a.
It's an extra
not a
zero.
109.
I was, not to make an excuse, but my formatting is off because you see that there's a bunch of zeros after the decimal that shouldn't be there on. So it's not consistent across the
Right,
board.
yes, gotcha.
Yeah, that was my fault when I was proofing. If you look at the next page, it's last year's. And then the last page, I sort of put them side by side. So the color coding is off, but what you'll notice is the trend is the same. The majority of our budget is essentially operations, systems operations, academic operations, where you see the educational apps is kind of the smallest sliver that's there, but it sort of breaks it down over time. You will notice, the percentages sort of change a little bit as we move, for from, when we added the category of athletics, it kind of pulled some dollars and cents out of one area. Educational applications is down as we tried to make what we're actually proposing more realistic. So last year, there were some things that we just didn't end up excuse me. The amount that we had budgeted last year was in surplus, so I reduced it this year on certain programs. So you'll notice just a slight adjustment there. But overall, the trend is similar. And I'm not sure if you have any questions.
So just to remind, there are two parts that are not budgeted here.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes.
The competency recovery and the learning management system. My hope is that might be supported through ESSER funds, and they fit well with the remaining ESSER funds, or potentially carryover funds. And so that amount is about
27,000?
27,000.
Yeah, I'm close to 28. If you go to that last page, you'll notice that it shows that last year was at 220,000. That is not what got approved in the budget. That was what was proposed at this time. And then again, some of that was funded through other means. So this year it looks like a large reduction of 220 down to 204. But again, that was actually some of those services were purchased through grant funding or you say it so well.
Carryover funds.
Carryover, thank you.
So we tried to, again, at that time, we were hoping we could smooth out the budget at that, for what was going to be proposed, knowing that there were some other possible resources to keep us whole in the technology for electronic access. Any questions for Mr. Parsons? We're almost through it. Instructional and curriculum development, really no significant changes here. Professional services for program improvements, line 371, that supports our curriculum review cycle. And 372, contracted services supports various, supports bringing in to help facilitate collaborative planning blocks or bringing in to do responsive classroom, things along that line. We also do use, what's not reflected here is we do use entitlement funds to support some other consultants to support learning. So those are our federal funds we've received that come down to the state and dispersed. I don't know, Mrs. Papalardo, if you have anything that you'd like to add about.
So I can speak to a few of the consultants who we do contract with to support some of that work. One in particular is All of Us LLC, the CEO of that organization. She is one of our main supports in building some personalized pathways that align to our teacher learning progression of shifting our practices from teacher-centered to learner-centered. And so she has helped to build all of the content for 3 different graduate courses with the partnership that we have with Antioch University. And our teachers have access to that. It's actually a pretty revolutionary opportunity that we have here for our educators, in that it truly is an anytime, anywhere learning opportunity. And over time, as teachers engage in more modules, they're able to eventually exchange their evidence of learning for graduate credits. And it's really kind of a self-paced opportunity. So that's one partnership that we have. Another one is our partnership with CSS Consulting. And so that would be with Carrie Thurston and Micah Thurston, who have been helping us to really learn more about literacy development with learners and impact our practices by facilitating data team meetings and directing some professional learning through the form of after-school retreats for our paraprofessionals, as well as during the school day and collaborative planning blocks with our teachers.
They're primarily funded through title grants. And we also have Math Empowered has also been, the board had an opportunity to hear a little bit about that at the last board meeting. Any questions for curriculum? Library services, a slight increase to our books and printed material. Libraries need books, they need access to reading materials, but nothing significant there. Certainly our libraries are significant, but nothing significant from a financial standpoint. School board services, just you may find this just for your own knowledge. Line 427 is the contracted services. So a big part of that is the recording of meetings, and then some in minutes. And a big number for the contracted services is down below, line 443. That is the apportionment for Interlakes for SAU2, which is $1.15 million. So again, that comes under contracted services when you look at that pie graph. Office of the Principal, we have contracted services. Again, I would draw your attention to is line 462. Big part of that number is our school resource officer, which is, again, we have not seen an increase in this for, I don't know that there's ever been an increase, in all honesty. That is about $22,000. I have to say, I've got to do a shout out. I think we have one of the most phenomenal resource officers, Officer Keith Drew, and the remainder of his salary is picked up through the town of Meriden. Traffic and detail, which we are incredibly grateful for, I think as is everybody who travels on Route 25, is about $38,000. Also events, when we have large events, we do schedule a detail and be at those events. That's part of our safety planning. Another part of this is about $6,300 is really to support graduation and a postage meter at ILES, $1,200. Others budgeted differently, but $1,200 for our postage meter at ILES. Replacement replacement equipment, I just want to bring your attention to. We do have $15,000 in there for middle school furniture replacement. That's a very small amount. There's much more that needs to be done. And I did reduce that amount with my hope that maybe at the end of the year, we might be able to support some refreshes that need to happen. Mr. Hilger has been waiting a very long time for some new furniture for the makerspace. Smart room, excuse me, for the smart room. And hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that at the end of the year. Any questions? Principal support, next page, that was our amazing administrator, secretarial staff that helps to support the administration. Auditorium, that is just our ability to keep our auditorium going, no changes. Operational plant, this is probably we get a little bit deeper. I don't know if you want me to keep going or if you need a 5-minute stretch break.
We're almost done.
You're almost okay. We'll keep plowing ahead. Okay. Operational plant, 330, the contracted services, and again, I'm going to refer you to my notes. I think they give you the best overview. We have about $9,750, and a lot of that is testing our water to make sure it's healthy. And we are required to do those testings by the state. Repairs and maintenance. Oh, sorry.
Brian, do we have to do PFAS testing?
Yes.
Okay, that's included. Thanks.
And then repairs and maintenance, we've got the various breakdowns you see there. It's about $12,000 worth of repairs and maintenance and operational plan. Any questions on operational plan? We have 14 custodians, just so that you know, and then 2 individuals who are kind of building systems and maintenance, and then Mr. Swanker, who provides oversight and does an amazing job with our significant projects, brings his skill set to that in terms of management. Okay. Buildings and equipment. We have 330 contracted services. A big part of that is our Honeywell service and EBI controls. EBI stands for what again, Brian? It's our
Integrated
security
building.
cameras.
And electronic building integration.
Okay, good job. And then middle high, we've got, we've got some underground tank inspections and fire sprinkler inspections, contracted repairs. We have them broken down on that sheet. Some of them are CIP, unanticipated repairs in the CIP are 65 grand. The middle high, another CIP project is the potable water storage tank coating. And also for CIP, I think that was it. The others are other things that need to be repaired, but are not part of the CIP. Replacement equipment, we have some of the CIP, 14 grand in cafeteria tables, gymnasium roof coating and drainage repairs. This is not part of the CIP, but it's 68,000. Is it when
you get a foot of snow on it like we have now, it'll leak tomorrow at the game.
So
Sarah can confirm.
it needs a bit of attention.
It only leaks in February.
We also have at ILES some carpet and tile abatement, 25 grand, that's part of the CIP. And again, big part of the CIP, $312,000 for the section 10 of the roof, which let's do a check for which part of ILES is that?
5, 6.
Yeah, good job. Sandwich Central School, we've got some abatement, and then seal coating. But again, the driver there of that is really okay. And care of grounds, probably most significant on really repairs and maintenance is $180,000. That's sidewalk drainage and the road for the south entrance. That is $180,000 in the CIP. That definitely needs attention. Then we've got some mulch and stuff to keep our playground safe. Replacement equipment. This is something we started doing last year, if the board recalls, and it really allowed us to create access for the playground at ILES to make that ADA accessible. We just have parts of our campus that really need to be updated and need site improvements, and just to create better flow for pedestrians within the campus. And so our goal is hopefully to continually budget that amount and just keep chipping away at it.
Brad, whatever happened to the discussion we had last year about the stairs? The exterior stairs on the south end?
We had money encumbered to work on that project, so
Okay.
that should start, late June.
Sure. Thanks.
We have, part of it is we do reach a capacity of how many projects we can manage at a time. So the next, transportation, again, we are, primarily it's our contract with First Student. There are some slight increases, but really the driver there is that additional run for the Hewitt Center, which again, we are very appreciative of. And just for your reminder, the transportation, we are in year 2 of a 3-year extension with First Student, and that has worked out well. I do want to certainly acknowledge Pam Bishop is the manager for First Student, and she's been amazing to work with. And she's great to talk to at 4 a.m. She's always out to do it.
Is that who handles our out-of-district placement transportation?
So for some of it, and some of it is through Lakes Region Transport.
Thank you.
And retirement incentives, again, there were 2 last year, there are 3 this year, although 4 retirements, but 3 retirement incentives. So that is certainly reflected in the increase that it is 3 people versus 2. And then we've already talked about the retired employee expenses. Next page, we budget unemployment and workers' comp all in one line. It makes it easier for reporting purposes. And then the remaining those are transfers that happen relative to federal funds and so forth. They're not things that you're raising money. It allows you to spend that money once received. And that brings us to our bottom line of $30,657,011, or 3.51%. However, we can reduce that by $35,000. I'm going to check if you want to try to calculate that.
We could. That wouldn't take that much.
Perfect. That is the master budget. Any questions at this point? Okay. The next section of your book, and I won't go through this, but tonight, this is staffing. You have the first page just shows the comparison from last, oh, I'm sorry, are you missing a page?
Take mine.
Whole section.
So you have a comparison of 23 to 24, and then you have a comparison from 09 to 23, 24, and it gives you a change over that time. For your review, you have a breakdown by school, gives you and various parts of the district. It gives you a whole lots of sheets to show you our staffing. If you flip to the next blue section in that part, you'll have the administrator's benefit overview and then the non-bargaining benefits overview. We asked, we are not recommending any changes, so same cost share, same holidays. We typically ask the board to try to approve that of the budget process so that we're able to then be prepared to issue contracts and so forth. And then you have a tab for CIP. And this is the capital improvement plan. So we've talked about these pieces. There is the 23-24, page 5 of the plan is the 23-24. There are pictures of the roof sections for your review. And I don't know if you want to talk about revenue tonight, or if you want to do that. There's a meeting scheduled for next week at 5:30. Would you, I'd leave that to the board if you'd like a quick review of revenue. Would you like to do that? And that.
Jump onto that. Your new total for your increase for your budget is $1,005,435, or a 3.39% increase to your bottom line. That helps.
So you have in the, and I do want to make sure that Lisa and Mark, you're following with the revenue section.
Yes.
And I am, yes.
So I think what I'd like you to do is look at 22-23 for a moment. You are going to see a very large amount under adequate education aid, basically almost $1.9 million. That was an anomaly. The state, and maybe, I don't know, Chuck might help me out here because this.
It's created a lot of disruption to the budget season this year all across the state, because there was a significant amount of money that was dispersed to the school districts. And the intent, as I understood it, was to help offset taxes. Well, that's great. But what happens the next year, now you have that revenue shortfall. So you end up with a seesaw effect or sawtooth effect where, yeah, your tax rate may have gone down last year, but it's going to shoot back up again this year. So you're almost a little less than $2 million less in revenue than you had last year. So it is going to have an impact on your tax rates, on your total tax bill for each of your towns.
So it's not something we typically receive. It is an anomaly. It did lower how much had to be raised by taxation to support the budget. But again, that is a major change for this coming year. So if you then look at this current year, we're predicting an unreserved fund balance of $250,000. Retained balance to be used. There was retained last year. The board, if you recall, you retained money that allows you to move money forward another year. $340,638. I think you did the maximum amount that you could do. There are
5%.
it's an RSA or
Yes, there
something
is, yeah.
that
It used to be
factors it in.
2.5%, then it was changed a couple of years ago to 5%. As long as you pass that.
And you have our Medicaid, retirees drug subsidy, keep going down, special education aid. At the end of the day, it looks like we are anticipating total revenues and credits of about 1.5 million. What we were proposing relative to the budget, which is a bit less now that we've subtracted the 35, leaving about 29 million to be raised locally. And that would be an increase from the current year of 12.03%. You know, if there's any questions on that. The next page is just a pie graph of that. You know, basically 95% of the budget is raised through local taxes. The next page, and again, this is slightly off because we just adjusted the bottom line, but it does show you the formula relative to what the costs of the apportionment would be throughout the 3 towns. And probably the next page makes it a little more localized relative to an individual's tax bill. You can see what warrant Article 3, which is the operating budget, and because the board has approved the teacher contracts in the IOEA, that will be warrant Article 4. And what that will do relative to an increase to one's taxes. So warrant Article 3 and 4 for $100,000 for Center Harbor is about $57 increased per year, and Meredith about $125, and Sandwich $72 per 100,000.
Talk to town administrators.
The next page is expendable trusts, just a reminder of what's, actually this needs updating. Yeah. The facilities is, not reflecting the amount that was withdrawn for the field. There's not 845,000 in the facilities. That, we'll have to update that. I think I gave you earlier, facilities, I think has. Facilities has right now $184,954. And that health insurance reserve is what I'm suggesting. You may want to consider a warrant article linking that to the facilities expenditure trust. And then the last pages relate to tax rate over time. And Chuck is certainly He has dug in deeply. If you have questions on that.
Of course, the challenge is when you've had an assessment update and the tax rate changes, you never know, what's contributing to it. So that's the challenge.
Reevaluations, so, yeah.
Well, you notice Center Harbor is the only one that had reval,
Right.
and they jumped 71%.
Waldenboro went through a reval last year too. Significant tax rate.
Oh, shit. I bet you're gonna have a lot of waterfront owners that are gonna be very happy, but you might have enough. So
Actually,
difference.
my property tax bill went down the second half of the year. But part of that may have been part of the return from the sweat plant. So,
Right.
But yes.
All right.
So, there is a meeting next Tuesday. Are there areas you would like us to look at? Is there any reductions you would like to consider, to bring forward? Also, I don't know if the board has considered, warrant articles. I think it would be helpful to do something with the expendable trust for facilities, potentially through fund balance, maybe a warrant article that at least starts feeding that again, maybe $100,000 through fund balance. Maybe you want to, if you want to start building towards being able to renovate bathrooms and locker rooms, maybe you want to raise a certain amount through taxation, through additional taxes. That's something to consider. And again, considering if you want to move, kind of sunset that health insurance expendable trust and move those funds to facilities. Our special.
I would suggest that this year coming off $1.8 billion hangover is not the best year to look for more money from taxes.
Special education, I would say, is, I think the expendable trust is at 311,000. We've not had to access that. I think that this may be a year not to add to that and maybe use unexpended fund balance that you would have put towards that, towards facilities. So it might be a way to take advantage of the fact that we haven't had to tap it and it's a healthy amount that might contribute more money to facilities.
Yeah, I think we have to address it somehow, and I think that makes sense.
Mary, I'd simply point out that historically, while it has become something of something greater at this point in time, we have put off locker rooms for a number of years. Something always seems to come up. That's important in my thinking. How we do it, that's another question.
And we do have an architect working on, again, looking at all of the locker space because we believe looking at the whole is going to give us a better product than trying to just dress up the current. And that's in process. So, some of that is being able to get that information, figure out what the cost is. So it may be premature to put out an amount, but it may be an opportunity to build a facilities expendable trust,
Well,
even if that's through fund balance. Maybe it's a higher number in fund balance. And again, shifting that 75,000 potentially.
I would say, I understand what you're saying, Howard. I have concerns that the community is exercised specifically about the bathrooms issue. And if that's the pressing need, and if that really has to be addressed
I wasn't subtracting.
No, no, no,
from the other.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate what Charlie said. It's a big number. It gets very big. It gets so much bigger once you bring, locker rooms into the immediate conversation.
All right.
And I think those are two separate issues that to some extent have to be addressed financially separately.
And I did put out the concept, maybe 125,000. Again, maybe we use that through current expendable trust funds, which again depletes it further. But that would get us 5 single restrooms, which I think again provides some it alleviates the current situation a bit.
It supports the community in what they've made clear they want, and we as a community are
And
engaging in this.
And it's not 2 million.
Right.
And certainly, what I would say is, you know, if the board supported that concept and at the annual meeting, let's say there's a warrant article to add that 75,000 to the expendable trust for facilities and some fund balance to that, being able to maybe start working on those single restrooms in March, you know, might make sense because again, our summer becomes very busy and our window becomes very small. And Mr. Swanker's trying not to look at me at this point. Because it's, you know, they're trying to add single restrooms in places sometimes that are not the easiest in an old building.
What's the amount of fund balances
In the facilities?
in anything that we can shift into this stuff?
I really think the 75 is the only thing you have available to shift. I think it's fund balance. Right now, Cheryl Soma, who has been trying to give us, you know, a read where we are in the budget, she does think we potentially will have a healthy fund balance. So maybe a warrant article that is, you know, up to $250,000 or $300,000 of fund balance for the expendable trust. Maybe that's a way to go. I mean, the board also at the end of the year, I mean, maybe you want to do 250,000. You can certainly carry money forward for projects. You can certainly make that decision at that time too. I think that the reality is, I do think the special ed is at least at a healthy point. But certainly the turf field, which looks amazing, and I think it's something everybody's very proud of. You know, certainly utilized a big part of the fund of the expendable trust for facilities, and that's what it was planned to do. And I think it's again trying to think about the renovations for the locker room and bathrooms. Is there a way to try to do something similar? And I guess the board's consideration is, again, I had indicated in the fall through natural attrition, I thought there would be one more teacher reduction. I propose and we maintain that teacher. So rather go from 25 classrooms at ILES to 24 instead of from 25 to 23. And that does give a class size of per class overall. You know, certainly they'll place the teacher with his greatest, but
adding an additional classroom. Right.
And then I'm
To
proposing
split that.
consider the ESSER funds for SES.
As someone who is into that seems like a need. Would support that.
Is there any conversation from last week's meeting about full day kindergarten? Is that not really part of?
Well, I think it's,
discussion?
what I can say is that, I would say the tenor was definitely in support of full day kindergarten. There are 13 students, in K and, first grade next year. So that's at least a small class. We left the meeting, you know, trying to probably some next steps are, you know, thinking about what does the day look like? I think our concern is that first graders do some of their heavy academic lifting in the afternoon. That would, you know, certainly takes a lot of the teacher's time. So having kindergarten there all day. We have in the budget the same level of at IS this year for next year.
Sandwich Central School.
Sorry, thank you, Sandwich Central School. At Sandwich Central School, we have the same number of paraeducators, and that one of the paraeducators has been in the kindergarten and first grade classroom all day. So that potentially, I think it can happen without really a need, financial need. I think it's really about being able to design a program that really meets the needs of the students. It could be a phase one of seeing if that makes sense. You know, I think a broader conversation, you know, could certainly over time build, you know, are there different configurations to look at in terms of the current staffing? But I think that it's certainly something we want to have some further conversations, Mr. Hilger and I, and then bring forward to the board. But I think from a financial standpoint, I don't see an impact.
On behalf of, you know, just concern about the community of Sandwich, if we can't sustain young families by providing, and this doesn't solve it, but it helps. Our children's center is a wreck. I wouldn't be at all surprised if in a couple of years it isn't there. And we don't have any after school the way Meredith does. Small community, but the big issue is housing. But the families that were there, a couple of, at least 3 of them were Sandwich families who've been there for a long time, whose grandparents are, you know, strained because of the lack of half-day program at the school and after-school care. So I have a long-term concern about the health of our community. We could easily become a retirement community and a summer place, and that's not what anybody wants, I don't think, long-term for that town. So anyway, that is, I would put it in a longer-term context, this issue. So I feel strongly about it, and I hope that we can accommodate this kind of a change.
It's certainly, I would say, before, you know, there was one young family, and they spoke so eloquently about it. Really, it starts to make families, young families, wonder if they need to move to a different community, because it is really, you know, next to impossible for a full-time working parent to manage a program that the kids leave at 12, and then when you have changes in the program that had been receiving students, it's really difficult. And that, I think, definitely was you know, echoed by more than one person there that evening. I will say there was one family that talked about the idea of the option. If you, as a family, if you wanted the option to have your child stay just till noon. And so those are certainly things to be looked at. I think it's a pretty workable piece. I mean, I think Mrs. Petiti is someone that I would want to make sure that we are providing the level of support. She's an amazing teacher. That was definitely echoed that evening. So I think, you know, what Mr. Hilder and I will do is have some further conversations, and hopefully at the regular board meeting in February, we can, you know, bring forward further conversation for the board to consider, you know, a proposal. But I think from a budget standpoint, I think that we are in a healthy place to be able to support it if that's the direction the board wants to go in. Unless you want to go with a completely independent kindergarten classroom for next year. That's a different conversation.
No.
No.
Okay. Mary?
Yes.
The handouts of your notes that you gave the school board, can you email those to me?
I thought I did, but maybe
I think
Maybe I
you
thought I
did. I think you did, Mary.
okay.
I
I will certainly do that.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any direction you'd like to give us relative to next week's meeting? At that time, probably you'll be thinking about finalizing, at least to bring forward to the February 8th public hearing.
Mary, one of the pieces of information I would like to have would be the services and schedules of available at the Sanders Child Care Center. For all board members.
Is there any other comments?
Nothing here.
Okay. I think we're finished for this evening, right? Till the next, January 31st meeting?
Yeah, week from today.
Okay. So I guess we can move on to announcements, Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So Tuesday, January 31st, we have at the Humiston Building Conference Room, the budget work session at 5:30. Wednesday, February 8th, we have the Interlakes School Board at the auditorium, the budget hearing at 6 p.m. And then on Tuesday, February 21st, I think this is the change that we had. That's our next regular school board meeting at 6 p.m. at the Humiston Building.
So that's now the 21st, not the 14th.
It's now the 21st. Correct, Mary? We went back.
Mr. Valentine on the 14th.
Valentine has.
So I think we shifted that to the 21st.
Yep.
And then, of course, Thursday, March 9th, is our Interlakes School District Annual Meeting at 6 p.m. at the Interlakes Community Auditorium.
And we have shifted that to the auditorium. I know it used to be in the gymnasium. It's actually an easier setup for our staff.
Sounds good. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Mark?
Yep.
Is there a second? Who was that? I couldn't hear.
It was me, Mark.
No, I couldn't hear the second.
It was Charlie.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting?
Aye.
What's breaking up?
Aloha.
You know.
Yeah, so, you know, that's true.
I got her back.
Bye, guys.
We're done?
Yeah, we're done. I'm gonna go get some sun now.